Hi, I'm Dominique McMullen, and you are listening to the Image Wellness Project. Now in its 4th season, recorded here in the beautiful Greenway and iconic offices, and sponsored by Activia and Irish Life Health. This is the podcast where we explore the multiple ways in which we can nourish our bodies, minds, and souls. I have a gorgeous guest with me here today, someone who I've wanted to chat to for a really long time. Daniella Moyles is a writer, a psychotherapist, and a mum. She's also founder of The Still, which is an online resource with therapy tools for real life change. She is a special person, and I am so looking forward to chatting to her today. So Daniella, welcome.
Thank you.
We've already been chatting and chatting.
I was just going to say, how insincere is the fake hello?
Yeah, we've already said hello many times.
Yeah. We've had a half an hour chat.
Yeah. It is nice to have you here, though. It is really nice to have you.
It's lovely to be on.
Yeah.
Finally. We've tried a few times.
Yes, we have. Thank you for your patience in our moving
and
diaries. And we have met before. We were just saying, I've interviewed you before, I think 7 or 8 years ago. You think 6 years ago.
I'm being kind. I'm saying 6. It's funny. Do you know you have such a good reputation for your interview style? Yeah, it's lovely. People always say, they're like, oh, you know, she's just so easy to chat with. And yeah, it's nice to hear that, isn't it? When you
so nice to hear. I feel like I'm going red.
I would love that if I was an interviewer and somebody said that about me. So yeah.
Well, I pick good guests. That helps.
I'll say nothing, no comment.
So how are you today? How are you feeling?
I'm good. Yeah. I'm really, really good. I have to say I am so in a good place in life. Yeah, I just have nothing to complain about and everything to be delighted for.
What an amazing thing to be able to say.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's a lovely mindset to have cultivated and also to have brought awareness to. I don't know if in the past I would have been as aware of the good days as I am now. I definitely had that strong negativity bias.
Yeah.
The bad days loomed large.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have
for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's definitely a default setting. It's very natural, yeah.
And you've worked hard on cultivating that.
Just a whole psychotherapy degree and many hundreds of hours of personal therapy, yeah.
just those two little
About
things.
a decade, yeah.
So take me back further than the decade even.
Yeah.
Because I think people still kind of will be aware of your life feels like it has 2 very distinct chapters, right?
Yeah.
That kind of radio DJ, like very well-known personality, model, all of those different things. The Stephen Screen girl with the photo pool. Tell me about who you were then, and even looking at it now through your psychotherapy lens, who you were then.
It's funny. I love her now. You know, there was a period of time where I found it very difficult to look back on that period of my life with clarity. I think that whole era got very marred by the ending, which was quite emotional. We'll get there. But the origin story is still something I'm really proud of, you know.
Yeah.
It was very novel, very exciting, and I had no idea what I was at. I was a professional blagger. Really had no strategy and no right to be in a lot of the places that I got to. But I look back now with such gratitude and fond memories, even for those Grafton Street photo calls. They were such a moment in time and honestly are starting to become really iconic, which love that.
Excuse me. Yeah. Completely iconic. Oh my God.
You see like an old, carousel of like back in the day, the photo calls. And I'm like, they were just, they're worth remembering.
I'm like, look at you. You go, girl. You look amazing. You flaunt that bikini next to whatever it is, the bin or
so many random things. So many random.
Yeah. And were you happy then? I know it's a big question, but
that's such a good question. You know, I'd say I was, but I didn't have a connection to that. Like, as I said, I had quite a negativity bias and I was young. You know, I think when you're young, your insecurities are louder, your self-doubt is louder. And you're probably more likely to focus in on those things. You know, even in the midst of a great day, if one little thing goes wrong or one little passing comment is made, that kind of becomes the point for the day.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that really is the loudest thing that you remember. So with a bit of hindsight and a bit of maturity, I think I was mostly quite a content, optimistic, carefree person. But I didn't sidestep that kind of default setting to really notice the negative and focus in there.
Yeah. But you were flying high. Like, you were busy. You were doing lots. You were presenting a morning radio show. You were winning awards. You were like a seriously busy person.
It's funny because for me, it was such a slow build. You know, for me, I felt like chronically unbusy. And that was such a big motivator. I mean, we all know we live in a productivity culture, and so much of who we are is defined by that achievement kind of aspect of the self and how busy we are. And my God, was that a loud kind of silent message in the modeling industry. You know, you would very much know if you were the least booked girl that day. You know, say you go to Ireland AM in the morning and that's all you had on. Yeah. But you knew that one of the other models was going for a photo call and then maybe for a photo shoot or for a fashion show. That really hurt, you know, it really stung to think, oh, I didn't get the bookings today. Yeah. So I was very driven by that need to be busy. And to me, it felt like such a slow build. Yeah. And even when I did get busy, I didn't really realize I wasn't busy enough in my own mind. I still didn't know how to say no. I had very much cultivated yes, I'll do it, I'll take it on kind of attitude. And that really, really met its expiration date in a very loud way.
So tell me about that. What happened?
So I started modeling when I was 17. Yeah. And this kind of period that I'm about to talk about didn't happen until I was 27. Okay, so I had 10 years. Yeah. 10 years of a kind of a slow build towards this period where I actually was very busy. From modeling, I had transitioned into broadcasting. I was backstage at a show called The Gloss. It's like a big show and it feels so glamorous, but you're there all day. You have a very early start time and you're there all day long. And there's a lot of downtime, a lot of sitting around between hair and makeup and rehearsals and the actual show. And all day long, they were playing this advert, this kind of booming advert that was calling for potential presenters for total exposure to be a presenter on Expose. Okay. And I had heard it a number of times and I thought, I'd love to do that. I'd really love to do that. So that was the origin story. I applied for that. I did the reality TV show, Total Exposure. And from there, I started booking actual broadcasting jobs in TV. And I did a couple of series on RT2 and it was just so much fun. But those series are few and far between. You know, you'll get one, you might shoot for a couple of weeks and then you'll wait a very long time to hear if you're getting recommissioned. And there's a lot of hope and then you aren't, you know.
It's a real, creates a real scarcity mindset as well.
Yeah, there's it was similar to the modeling industry in that sense that you had that urgency. That's that need to be booked, that need to be busy, that need to not feel idle. And thankfully, I came up with a solution to that. I was like, okay, if I can move into radio, that's Monday to Friday. I'm going to be busy Monday to Friday. And so I did. I started working on a kind of a training station. It was called FRQ, Frequency or Freak. And I learned how to use the radio desk and how to do audio editing. And I just loved it. I did not expect to love it. Now, I loved all aspects of broadcasting, but I discovered a real anorak in me, like a real nerd for radio. You know, I really enjoyed all of the aspects of creating the sound of radio as opposed to just the presenting. And so I can't remember how long I did that for, probably a couple of months. And then the programming director down in iRadio in Athlone gave me a chance on the graveyard shift, paired me with a comedian called Cormac Moore, who I'm so grateful to say I had just had natural chemistry with. And I think that was a big part in our subsequent success, you know, because that really had nothing to do with us. That was his good eye. So we used to do 9 p.m. till midnight. We did that for 6 months. And then we got poached up to the Big Smoke.
Okay.
And we did the Zoo Crew on Spin 1038.
Oh my God, I remember listening to that.
Yeah, it was post-drive time, which was really fun.
Yeah.
Really fun. I think that was 6 till 9, if I remember right. You know, so we were starting to edge a little bit further into the daylight, which was so fun. And we only did that for 6 months before we got moved to breakfast. So yeah, we got moved to the helm of the day pretty quick. And
It's very quick.
yeah, breakfast it's the show that you want to be on radio. You know, but that's a regional station. So I think the next step, had I had managed to maybe cope with the whole pressure of it a bit better, would have been national radio, you know, something like 2FM or, which would have been so amazing. But I enjoyed breakfast a lot until I didn't.
Until you didn't.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it's one of those things that just never feels like work. Now, when your alarm goes off at 4:30, it feels like work. But then when you get in there, there's just such a sense of adrenaline and such a love for what the show can achieve, what it can sound like, the laughs that you can have.
Yeah.
And it's, even though it is contained and confined by a lot of things, you know, by the station's identity and sponsorships, there was still a real sense of creativity every day. You know, there's dead air for you to fill every single day. And that was really fun. So I did that for 2.5 years, and it was probably about a year in that my health started to decline. Now, I very, very, very much did not have language or knowledge around mental health. Like, I was a very linear thinker, a very analytical thinker, very intolerant of emotionality, very intolerant of incompetence. Like, I had quite a hard exterior at that time. Yeah.
Such a change.
Yeah, it's interesting when I think back, that version of me. And I mean, a lot of those things are ways of coping in the world. You know, if you're a model since you're 17 and you're getting all these rejections and things that I'm talking about, you have this kind of way of coping. And so, and if I'm being totally honest, I was very rewarded for those traits, you know, to be hardened, to be intolerant of emotionality and competence. It's quite a masculine kind of stance, if that makes sense. Like, you know, I think I really turned away from the more softer side of myself. Yeah. And bearing in mind that mindset, when my health started to decline, I approached it in that way. You know, I very much wasn't thinking of it in this kind of abstract, am I well? Like, I need to check in with myself. You know, I was not there. So,
was the world there? What kind of year are we talking?
We're talking like 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. There was
a little bit, not much. Yeah.
If there was,
you weren't aware of it.
Yeah. I mean, there was no, you know, the way now you hear so much about anxiety, so much about mental health.
Yeah.
It was so not on my radar.
Okay.
You know, if there was talk about it, it was
not reaching you.
No.
Yeah.
No. And I don't think it was anywhere near as prevalent as it is now. And that obviously has so many benefits and some cons, you know?
For sure.
But yeah, I just started to go to the GP. I was 27 at the time, and I started to go to the GP like really regularly, like a little bit sus how regular I was going. And my GP now, she's retired, but my God, what a woman. She was so ahead of her time and so holistic in her approach, you know, because I was really asking that woman for medication. You know, I was going in being like, I need a solution now. I have stuff to do. Yeah. And she would kind of approach my various symptoms, which ranged from, you know, quite subtle things like issues with my digestion, my skin, hair and nails, just a general kind of decline in vitality and kind of overall feeling of well-being in my body, to then issues with my sleep. And I had this kind of chronic twitch in my eye, which was absolutely fine until I had to model after the radio show. And the photographer would be like, can you make that stop? I'd be like, no, it's totally involuntary. It's just a twitch that won't go away. And I don't know if anyone's experienced a twitch in their eye, but it is so irritating.
Yeah.
Like,
I have,
and it was chronic. It was nonstop in my eye. It was like my whole eye would like compress, and so that was quite irritating. But then, you know, those are very livable symptoms. You know, they're irritating, they're not nice, but they're very livable. But then it started to progress. I was having these pains in my heart. It felt like popping, like pains in my heart. It would really hurt when I inhaled. So I came to her next with that, and she sent me for an ECG just to kind of pacify, and everything came back normal. And then it kind of progressed to this is where she drew the line for me. I was coming in saying, I'm extremely disorientated. I don't know where I am. I don't know my name. Now,
wow,
I know they're panic attacks, but this is how linear my mind was. You know, I was describing the symptoms so analytically and not connecting them whatsoever. So she actually sent me for an MRI scan on my brain to make sure. And, you know, she was asking me questions like, you know, are you having anything happening afterwards? She was obviously trying to see if something genuinely neurological was happening.
Yeah.
Again, everything came back healthy. And she said to me, you need to try yoga. And I
can imagine you didn't like that.
Sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Like, I had never even thought about yoga. It just was not on my radar either. You know, I was aware of it, but it was not something I had any interest in. And, you know, she was kind of prescribing me these lifestyle changes. I ever tried meditation, and I was thinking I couldn't think of anything worse. You know, and she was basically saying to me, you need to assess your lifestyle. And I totally ignored her, you know, as is to be expected.
As you would, yeah.
Yeah. So I do remember there being about 3 months after that prescription where she was really like, you have gone as far as you can now. You need to start looking at your lifestyle. And I totally ignored her, where things started to really deteriorate. And those kind of panic attacks that I was describing with this sense of disorientation became almost daily.
Oh my goodness, really?
Yeah, you know, it's funny when I talk about it now, it's unimaginable to me how I coped with that.
Yeah.
Just knowing, you know, from a more educated place what was happening in my body, in my mind, that I managed that every day.
What was happening from your educated place now?
I mean, I was just in a complete burnout state. Now, there's different ranges of burnout. My whole trajectory since has been to understand exactly what happened to me. Really, that's been the main motivator. It's been what's really driven me, is to understand what happened, because it was so terrifying, you know, to feel like you're yourself one day. And look, I very much accept in hindsight it wasn't a slow burn, but to me it felt really slow. It felt really, really sudden.
Sudden, yeah.
Like I woke up one day and I wasn't myself. Now, my GP would argue that she told me many times and gave me a lot of notice, but you hear what you want to hear.
Yeah,
you know, we have a very strong sense of self-concept. We also are really good at not assimilating new information and kind of bending the world to meet what we want to believe. And so, yeah, I really was confronted with the power of the mind and how, you know, I just was determined to keep going. But my body really couldn't. I now understand, you know, my nervous system it had kind of gone through a sympathetic state, which is your anxiety state, into a dorsal state, which is your shutdown state. And then you can unfortunately get stuck in a combination of those two, which is like you're oscillating between a shutdown state, which is like your dissociation, and an activated state. And that is the most debilitating of all. And that's where panic lives. It's where panic and agoraphobia, procrastination, severe anxiety, that's where that lives. And that's where I ended up.
Can you describe, I have had panic attacks, and I always struggle to describe what they're like, what it feels like for someone who doesn't know or who lives outside of that world, those two states, which also feel familiar. How do you describe that to someone? I mean, with your psychotherapist lens, and then also with the lens of someone who's sat in that and who knows what that feels like.
I always feel like my panic attacks sound really different. When I hear about somebody describing a panic attack, like, you know, this idea of pressure on your chest or not being able to catch your breath, I do think that was there. But my most prevalent memory is that really, really debilitating sense of disorientation. It was very much, and I mean, look, I'm a very heady person. You know, I was very severed at the neck in my past self. You know, I didn't really pay much attention to the sensations in my body. So who knows, you know, maybe all of that was there and I very much lived in my mind. So what I remember is probably the mental aspect of it, which was this feeling that my mind was extremely, terrifyingly disorientated.
Wow.
I used to have this really strong, overwhelming urge that I just no longer knew who I was. Like I wasn't connected to reality. So I could be looking at a familiar face one moment and the face would suddenly look like somebody I don't know. Now, if you were to actually tell me to pause in that moment and ask the question, who am I? I could answer. Or who are you? I could answer. And so interestingly, that's one of the things I first learned to do, was to start reciting facts about myself. So I would say my name, my date of birth, where I grew up, and it would help me to kind of ground
Center.
down out of that spiraling sense of disappearing into some kind of psychosis or whatever I thought was happening. And I don't think the body sensations of it really frightened me that much. It was that sense of kind of mental obliteration that I just, it really terrified me to my core. And still now, when I think about it, I mean, I feel very, very lucky that I understand the mechanics of it. And this was the only way I could have overcome the fear, was to understand it so deeply that I'm now above it.
Yeah.
Even if it happened again, okay, I don't like the feeling, but I know exactly what it is, mechanically, theoretically, and I know exactly what to do.
Can you connect to it at all now? Like, can you kind of, I don't know what I mean. Like, can you sit in it? Can you know what it was? Can you like dip into it in like a controlled way now? Or is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I don't think when you have experienced something like that, I don't think it's ever gone, right? Like, you know, it's like saying, oh, I never have sad anymore. You know, anxiety is just like a fleeting emotion. Like it's something we all experience. And so, yeah, I absolutely do definitely experience periods of anxiety. But I think the difference now is that I have a very genuine sense of grounding. Like as in I can genuinely really feel my feet on the ground. So that spiraling that was such a big aspect of why it became so big for me doesn't happen anymore. So I might touch off the fringes, like the edges of what that feeling used to feel like. Thankfully, that is extremely rare now and usually happens because of a number of factors. Like there'd want to be a lot of like my sleep, my diet, like everything would want to be going awry for that to happen now.
So what happened then? So these panic attacks started happening. You were aware of feeling very disorientated. Were you still like hosting?
I was still working,
and modeling and front facing all the time while feeling like that? Must have been
a little bit. I started to pull back a little bit, which was given the penchant for productivity was a big defeat. I was starting to have to admit that I couldn't quite manage the day-to-day functioning that I had before. So I was still working for those 3 months, but it was like a step of stairs. You know, it was just getting increasingly worse and worse and worse. And really the thing that was so telling was my erraticness emotionally. You know, I think it's one thing to discuss the physical symptoms, but something we don't really want to talk about is how messy it is in truth. Like the human experience of it is extremely messy, and the way that it kind of spreads out of you and affects the people around you. Like I was definitely extremely emotionally erratic. I was irritable and angry and up and down and inside out, you know. It was, I would imagine, very difficult to be my colleague at that time. And I wouldn't say I held a great conversation, you know. And I've discussed this a few times, kind of the moment that I really accepted that something was wrong. And it's not a very flattering portrayal of myself, but it's very real as to what was happening at that time. You know, because to be in that state is very draining on your body. You know, my sleep was beyond the breakfast show. My sleep was very bad. My nervous system was just fried. And, you know, my mental health was not stable. And one of the days I remember coming out of some job, I can't remember exactly what it was. And I was pulling out of a parking space. And again, this is something I understand so much better now, how this particular trigger was such a safe place for this rage to come out that I'd obviously been holding in. But somebody cut me off, and I rolled down my window and I just spewed into this man's day. Like the way I spoke to this man is so uncharacteristic. You know, I was cursing at him. I was shouting, and his jaw just dropped and he leaned back, and his elderly mother leaned forward and just said, "Don't speak to my son that way." And I just rolled up my window and had to take a good, long, hard look at myself. Yeah. And he just drove off. He didn't even say a word to me. He didn't, like, fair play to that man, because I deserved a word. He said nothing. Yeah.
Oh God.
And that was kind of the moment that all of the things that had been said and that had been happening prior kind of all collapsed in on, well, there's something wrong. there's something really wrong. I'm really unrecognizable now. And it's funny because prior to that incident, I'd become increasingly agoraphobic. So I had this really, really debilitating fear of leaving my house. It was so linear, so visceral. I would describe it as, I hate the feeling of people walking behind me. That's the way I would describe it. Like, I hate the sound of feet. I hate but it's just, you're so overstimulated, that you can't, the idea that there's something happening behind your sensory, it's danger. Just too much. You're in threat. So and that had been happening for months, but even that wasn't enough for me to realize something was wrong. It was that kind of incident in the car, and I suppose it was so human. Like, I had my reflection was given back to me by this other person, and that was when I handed in my notice that day.
Yeah. Did that feel like a relief? Did you know that, or was that something that you felt
I don't
awful?
think I was feeling anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's funny because it should have felt like so many things. It should have felt like a relief. It should have felt like a defeat. It should have felt like a big decision.
Yeah, no, you
were
numb.
It just felt like absolutely nothing.
And then you went traveling, which really
is counterintuitive.
So I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, I feel like if I went to do that, being in that state, but I wouldn't. I feel like my family would be like, "Are you mad?" Like, I want to wrap you up in cotton wool and mind you. But it was the perfect thing for you. It was what you needed to do.
Yeah, and it didn't happen. It wasn't like the car incident and then the handing in the notice and the next day. I did actually stay home for about 3 months after I'd handed in my notice. And I was on the couch in the therapy room twice a week, every week. Now, that is not near long enough, and it was not near the end, but it was what I did in person at that time. And I had been doing weekly sessions prior to that. But I went intensive when I handed in my notice. And, I mentioned that I had been feeling numb. Something about these therapy sessions, or something about maybe the relief of the break, allowed a little space for a spark of intuition. And again, the spark of intuition was so counterintuitive. It was very much an urge to flee, an urge to run. And look, I recognize that might have partially been a way of coping, because everything felt like it had crumbled here. And I felt like, as you said, public facing. So I felt like, I don't remember feeling like a failure, but I probably felt embarrassed. I probably felt like I couldn't understand myself, what was happening, let alone to explain to somebody else who was to ask me, what's wrong? Why did you quit? What's next? It's always what's next, because you're meant to know what's next. I didn't know what was next. I was like, I just would love to be able to walk down the street without feeling like this, know?
Yeah.
So, that little intuition was probably very facilitated by this idea that I could run away, and that I could be someone else. I could be anonymous. I could figure it out. And so I did. I booked a one-way ticket and I didn't come back for 2 years. And it was honestly the best decision I ever made. It was like a self-prescription, and it's not for everybody, and nor would I recommend it as a solution to what I've just described. But it was exactly what I needed. And it was such a turning point. It was a real, that version of myself I described before, that was very linear, very analytical, very severed at the neck. Yeah, there was a real shift from there to somebody who was far more vulnerable and couldn't deny it, and had emotion there that needed to be expressed and not just trampled over, and had been through something that my mind in its analytical way couldn't explain. I had to get down into the body. I had to understand in a different way what had happened and why.
And traveling has the most, I've done a bit of traveling, but it has the most amazing way of doing that, of stripping everything else out and away, because you only have the things in your back. You don't have any stuff. There's no people, there's no demands other than the itinerary you make for yourself. And it does force you to be very self-reflective, as well as placing you within the big world where you suddenly see other people and other environments and that actually I don't matter that much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Is that what traveling gave you?
Oh, I
2
think
years.
there was so many things. When I think about it now, it is exactly as you described. There's like a real physical and kind of metaphorical stripping away, because we don't realize it, but we have this self-concept where we live, and it's very much buffered by, you know, the routines that we go through every day, the people we associate with, the work that we do, and all of these titles that we give ourselves. And, you know, and we don't realize how much that kind of creates a little invisible prison. Maybe it's not a prison for some, maybe it's a mansion and it's a beautiful experience. But, you know, usually it's a kind of these little mental prisons, and we don't stray outside of those because it doesn't fit with the person we've created here. But when you leave, there's just all this space. And I was having these realizations that were so trivial, but so huge to me. Like, because here, since I was 17, I always felt like I needed to be a model, look like a model. I could not do that anymore. And it was so liberating. You know, I could just wake up and not wear makeup, not think about my appearance, not dress whatever way. And it didn't matter how anybody perceived me, or if I looked like I was okay enough to be that title anymore. So that was lovely. And then there was also, as you said, this kind of sense of how small you are in the world and how insignificant you are. But really, I think the main thing, and I want to understand this more, and I want to prescribe this more in my work now, was just the experiences of awe that I was having. My life really lacked awe. I had a lot of adrenaline, but I didn't have a lot of awe. Like, I don't even know how to describe what that feels like. I think it's unique for every single person, but I was having these experiences of being in awe of things all the time, because I was traveling and, you know, experiencing new cultures, new landscapes, new people. And there was just this constant, beautiful feeling of awe. And I think it really did something to reset, rejig my mind. You know, there's actually so much research on it that I've been so fascinated by, because none of this was intentional. I felt stripped bare and just fully following my intuition, and kind of for the first time in 10 years being completely carefree, authentic, even childlike, because I had absolutely nothing to lose at all. And it was honestly the best decision of my whole life. And really, really, really odd to think that was the solution to being agoraphobic, was to go out into the world in this solo mission to learn something. But, you know, it gave me time to read. It gave me time to think. It gave me time to all these questions that you never ask, like, why do I do that? Why do I think that? Why do I want that? I just had a bit of space, and it was amazing.
And what do you think, did you have any realizations as to why you had felt the panic and the fear and were there any moments when you were traveling where it made sense why you'd been the way you'd been up until that point?
Yeah, it was a slow awareness. And, you know, it's something that I only feel I really have answered fully in the last 2 years.
Wow.
You know, it's only since I've kind of finished my training. You know, we'd love to think that the psyche is really simple, but we're actually so complex, and there's so many things that underlie. I would get this sense of, oh, I know now. And then something else would be revealed.
Like, oh, now I actually know.
Yeah, like there's so much of what we tell ourselves is what we want to see at that time.
Yes.
What we're capable of holding, and that's good. That's right. You know, we don't need to be overloaded with every little thing that's being stored away in our minds. And I'm grateful that it took all of that time to do that work, as it should. You know, you don't become a certain way over a number of decades to then unlearn it over a number of days, weeks, months. You know, it takes as long as it takes. And for me, it took probably, I would say, 8 years really of starting to do the work, starting to understand a bit more clearly. But yeah, in the immediate, what became clear was some of the vulnerabilities that I had perhaps masked as a way of coping from when I was younger. You know, there was definitely things that created who I was, that created that kind of hardened sense of self that maybe was a little bit disconnected and couldn't really read those very loud warning signs until they were an actual roar.
Yeah.
And I do think that made me more vulnerable to a burnout. You know, if I had that self-awareness, that body awareness, that ability to even separate my identity from productivity and to just slow down, I think there was a lot of factors. And
when you came back, did you immediately go into starting to study psychotherapy? Was that something that you kind of, what ended the travel actually?
That's what I came back
home?
for. Yeah.
That is what sent you home. Okay.
So I was kind of, you know, I was roaming for a year very happily. And I remember people kept saying to me, you'll get so sick of it. You'll get so tired of living out of a bag. I loved it. Oh my God. I was like, I could do this forever. I loved it so much. I never once got tired of it. I never once got sick of it. Now, look, I was 30, which is like, you know, I was edging into the older category in the hostels. So maybe I would have gotten sick of it eventually. I'm 36
like,
now.
Who's the old lady in the corner?
Maybe not. You know, I could have been the cool aunt or something in the hostel. But, you know, it was acceptable age to be there. So I don't think I had those reflections just yet. And I really did enjoy it so much. But I did definitely start to get new urges, new impulses, new intuitions, right?
Okay.
The first, which was so unexpected, was this impulse for stillness, which I had never, and I mean never had before. Like if I had even attempted to meditate, it was just like my hell on earth. It was like a projection screen of everything I needed to do and hadn't done and was doing
Sounds
wrong.
familiar.
And I just was like, what is this? Like, no, it's not for me. So yeah, you know, after going and really filling my days for this kind of whole year of traveling as far and as wide as I could, I had this sense that I'd love some stillness. And so I signed up for a yoga teacher training in Thailand with no intention of ever teaching. It was very much just a personal retreat, you know, a way to pacify this urge for achievement while I was traveling, to kind of say I achieved that in those 2 years, you know. I came home with a qualification. It wasn't for nothing. And it ended up being something that, it's so cliche, it's so eat, pray, love, but you know, there is something to be said for what my GP had told me. And like, I did need some yoga. I really did. And in fact, I needed it to the degree that I got it there, which was a fairly intense 200 hours over the course of 4 weeks.
Wow. It's a lot of yoga.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. And that was like the first kind of shift. Okay. And from there, the next kind of impulse was for a little bit more groundedness. So instead of traveling, you know, every day or every second day, I lived in Mexico for 6 months, and then I lived in Bali for 6 months. Okay. So I was kind of staying, you know, I still felt like I was in the world and of the world. And, you know, I would do day trips to Cozumel or to wherever, and I still felt like I was traveling. Yeah. But I had a base as opposed to a backpack. Yeah. Okay. So those were the two kind of changes that I noticed first. And they were kind of a, you know, if you were to like pull a slingshot and that was me at the beginning, and then you're just rebounding, you know, for the year. And then there's kind of like just a natural stilling, I think it was just kind of,
it's a lovely visual.
It was a natural kind of progression, let's say. And I just want to say, I feel so privileged and grateful to have been able to have the space and the means and whatever else in place to take that year. Because when I think back to how I was before I left, if I had not had that option, maybe I had a different life and I had responsibilities that I couldn't leave, or I didn't have the financial freedom that I had. It's given me such respect for how people adapt, right? Like the adaptations that people who are in that situation and don't have that option that I had to kind of throw it all to the wind. I'm leaving the job. I'm leaving the country. You know,
but you'd saved money for a long time.
I mean, I was nearly 30, so whatever I spent traveling, I should have bought a house or something responsible, but I didn't, and I regret nothing. I regret nothing. Good. Yeah. But I am so like genuinely, deeply grateful to have been in the position to have been able to follow these little impulses and let my body do naturally what it obviously needed to do, which was go until it was ready to stop. Yeah. And yeah, it just to say that, because I feel like I'm a much more empathetic, much more attuned, much more emotionally intelligent person now than I was because of this experience. You know, it's really, really changed me. When I did get grounded, the urge to do psychotherapy came in.
Wow.
Yeah, it was funny. When I did my leaving cert, I applied to do psychology. So it was always there.
Yeah.
It was always there. And I didn't get enough points, but I did arts in NUIG, and you had to, there was some kind of caveat. I can't remember it exactly now. It was something like you couldn't fail any exams and you had to get a certain amount of points in your psychology. So you could do psychology as part of arts to move into full psychology. And I did manage that. I got into full psychology and then I dropped out because I got a TV show.
Okay.
I was overlapping.
Yeah.
So that the urge had always been there, but I'd never gotten my qualification. So I remember when I was thinking about, okay, well, what's next now? You know, am I going to live in Bali forever? Am I going to travel forever? And I very much was open to that idea, by the way. And I remember writing on a notepad, this is really funny, my plan A and my plan B, right? And I was trying to decide which one I would do. I was writing in the pros and cons. One was move home to my parents' house at 31, maybe nearing 32, if I'm being honest. Go back to college, be a mature student, facing 4 years to do this degree that I, you know, just had a kind of a whisper of an intuition that I wanted to do.
That's a lot.
And the other was to stay in Bali and start a bikini line.
They are quite different.
I swear to God. I went to the manufacturers. They were like, you need 10K, you can get this many patterns, this many sizes, you can model it yourself on the beach. Thank God I didn't pick that because COVID was looming.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Wow. Yeah.
It was a terrible idea. It was a bad idea. Like it was just, but I remember sitting down and being like, pros, cons.
I don't know. It sounds quite nice, a bikini line.
I was so leaning in that direction, but unfortunately, the logical brain managed
knew what
to
you
see
needed. Yeah.
that there was more pros on the other side, and I reluctantly admitted defeat for that idea.
So funny.
And I do actually remember it being that, you know, clear as in like I really wanted the bikini thing to come up trumps, but it just really did not.
Your gut knew.
Yeah, it was undeniable. Like when I wrote down the pros and the cons, I was like, well, that's clear. You know, it's crystal. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But it's clear. So I came home to start
mum and dad's house.
start my degree. Yeah, 32. It was a really big come down. And I came home in the depths of winter, you know. It was a lot from the tropics and my bikini dreams. Yeah, it was a lot.
And studying psychotherapy is a hefty thing to do.
If I knew then.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad I didn't know then. I'm really glad I didn't know then. Yeah, the course is if I could use one word to describe it, and I mean this in the best possible way, it's suffering. Honestly, that's what it is. The training is suffering, as it should be.
Yeah.
You know, they very much weed out anyone who is not there for the right reasons and who may be unethical or unhelpful to a vulnerable client in a room with just two people, you know? But yeah, it's a really intense, really unflattering, really suffering filled experience.
My mom studied psychotherapy as a
I
mature
respect your mum.
student, so I have some idea. And a lot of self-reflection, which I imagine was good for you and interesting for you, considering the traveling and
my
where
auntie
you were.
is the psychotherapist, and she reframed it for me beautifully. And if it wasn't for her, I would have dropped out. There's no world. She said to me, "You're an explorer. You're an adventurer. You were exploring the world. Now you're exploring yourself. You're turning your lens inwards. So you did an outwards period of exploration. Now this is your inwards period of exploration."
Yeah.
And she said, "And I guarantee you, it's going to be even more worthy." And she's just an amazing woman. Like she is just the most, like if you could picture a psychotherapist and everything they should embody and everything they are, it's her. So I kind of had that model as well. You know, it's nice to be able to see what you're trying to be, because sometimes if you can't see it, you know,
it's harder
to have so many obstacles for it to feel so difficult, and then not to be able to see what you are at the end is harder. But with her, I had a kind of an end goal, and she gave me a nice reframe that helped me to cling on in the harder days. We started our class with 30 and I think 9 graduated.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a gauntlet. Yeah.
That's a big percentage.
Yeah. And it's getting more and more popular every year.
Is it?
Yeah, and from COVID, it just exploded, really exploded. Yeah,
I've always been tempted, actually.
It's so brilliant. Like, I know I've really not sold it.
Yeah, now I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that.
But honestly, I would never take it back. It is the most amazing. Do you know what it's like? It's like a life hack for living. So I feel like the me before, I had no idea where I ended and another person began. Like, I was constantly muddled by what was mine, what was my fault. Like, I just was not able. I really could not understand that boundary. And now I understand it so clearly. So even if something is unpleasant or challenging, I can sit in my own peace and say, that's not mine. And that's okay. It's not nice, but it's not mine.
So
and my God, the freedom that gives you. And I can manage a panic attack now as well, which is great.
Would be good to know.
I'd pay any money for that.
Yeah, me too.
It's great.
And stillness, which is, you've mentioned it a few times, and it's the name of the Still is the name of the business you run. Is stillness what you discovered in psychotherapy? And talk to me about what stillness gives you generally.
You know that saying, what is it? You teach best that which you need to learn.
Yeah.
I just really needed to learn stillness. You know, I was really lacking that ability to sit with myself, sit with how I felt, sit with what was happening.
Yeah.
I was a very, very good defensive player. You know, I had a lot of coping mechanisms. I had adapted a lot of ways of being in the world that allowed me to avoid those things. And I don't think I'm unique in this. I think I had internalized a lot of the large cultural messaging, you know, like things around productivity, things around busyness, things around self-worth, what makes you an okay person, whether it's material items or more abstract achievement things. You know, that messaging is really loud. And even when we know it cognitively, even when we can name it and see it, it doesn't mean we can detach from it. It is so prevalent. Yeah. You know, all you have to do is look at your phone. Yeah. Like, I mean, look, I love Instagram for what it is, a platform to reach people. But if you were to scroll on that mindlessly, like, I mean, you are just absorbing the worst of what it is to be a human. Like, it's constantly reinforced that you need better, bigger, more. You're not okay. You're not enough, you know, and it's getting more and more bizarre every year. Like, the way you can scroll through your algorithm and just see such suffering and such privilege in the same moment. It's so bizarre. But yeah, I think I had a lot of that internalized, and I was a very, a person who was very uncomfortable with stillness. I do remember going to a couple of ad hoc yoga classes before I quit my job and like feeling just absolute rage at the teacher. You know, just, she was telling me to breathe and I was like, what are you taught? Like, I'm breathing all day long. Like, what is this instruction? You know, asking me to sit still or asking, you know, I just was very, very adverse to stillness.
What you resist persists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's usually exactly what you need, you know. And then I discovered yin yoga, which is a very specific style of yoga. And it's funny because it's my favorite style of yoga now, and it's the stillest. It's the one where you'll hold your postures for 3 to 5 minutes. And you really are asked to sit with the discomfort of what's coming up in your body. So these were all tools that I was missing, you know, that ability to sit still and to actually be there, to not be gone in my mind, and to feel what my body was feeling, you know. And so I think stillness and yoga and meditation and awe and space and self-reflection gave me all the things I was missing to cope better in the world. Like, you know, I feel like I had my midlife crisis when I was 27, but like, grateful I did, you know, because now we get to like be, you know, this side of things is hopefully going to be a lot more stable and steady. Yeah. You know, but I was, if I didn't have it then, I was due a midlife crisis. I was definitely going to be a midlife crisis for sure. For sure.
Midlife crisis at 27. Maybe have another one at 55.
No, thanks. No, I've had enough.
Talk to me about what you've cultivated now with all of this knowledge and with all of the information that you've kind of gathered. What does life look like for you now? What is your peace? Where is your stillness? What are you doing on a daily basis?
It's funny because it was for a period of time, it was so different. And now it's starting to kind of come full circle. It's very bizarre in a way I never expected. But what I rediscovered first and foremost was a real love for learning that I did not know I had. Even when I finished school, I didn't go to college. I mentioned I was a dropout. I dropped out of multiple colleges. And I kind of had this story that wasn't for me. I wasn't able. You know, I didn't read. I had this kind of idea of myself, you know, this self-concept, this kind of little mental prison of who I was. And when I stopped and went traveling, I was kind of able to reassess all of that. And now I'm a prolific reader. I love it. And I love learning. I went back to college, you know, and for a lot of people, I think being a mature student is uncomfortable. It is, you know, kind of feels like you're behind a little bit, or maybe it's your life's on hold, or things aren't quite right. But I was like, no, I absolutely really, really love this. You know, when I went back, it was like with gusto. Like I got a distinction. I was like serious about it. I wasn't just trying to, you know, waffle through it. And since then, it's just been a continuation. I've just finished actually on, what day is it today? Thursday. On Friday gone, I finished my postgraduate diploma in trauma-informed psychotherapy. And it's kind of just opened a pathway of learning. Like I think it's going to be lifelong learning now. And this still is a gorgeous outlet in terms of funneling that knowledge into something that I feel my 27-year-old self really could have done with. You know, like a place that feels accessible, familiar. Like mental health always felt, or the mental health world or mental health services felt a bit alien, a bit
for someone else.
Yes. You know, authoritarian, a little bit, not for me, not made for me by me, right? You know, it was something that I had to learn. You know, or I kind of felt like maybe submissive in the process, or like I was being pushed along by it. I didn't really know what was happening. Whereas I think what I could have done with that age 27 was just a bit of psychoeducation, a bit of somebody speaking to me like a peer, somebody explaining to me what was happening, why it was happening. You know, do you want to learn a little bit more about this? Now, who knows if I would have said yes. You know, it's fairly stubborn, but it probably would have been a bit more accessible than what I received, which was a very strict psychoanalytic approach. Ultimately extremely helpful, but intimidating, cold. You know, it very much felt like I was the inferior in the relationship, if that makes sense.
It does.
So this still is, I hope, what I would have needed back then. It's trying to make mental health accessible financially, in terms of the language, in terms of how it's delivered. You know, it's online, and it's not a substitute for therapy. It's absolutely not a substitute for therapy, but it is an amazing accompaniment to therapy. It's everything that I needed back then, and everything I continue to learn. And it gives me a lot of purpose and a lot of space for stillness, because I teach a lot of the classes on it, and it makes me reflect on my work and embed what I've learned.
And what does day to day look like for you now? Are you do you know, it just struck me there, which is kind of interesting, is that you left that media landscape and you went off and you've done your psychotherapy, but you're sitting here now in front of a camera. Like there is a full circle feeling.
And it's funny, I just filmed a TV show
for
the first time in 8 years, where I was a psychotherapist I am a psychotherapist on the TV show.
Wow.
Which is, I just never saw that coming ever. You know, I kind of felt like there was the before, as you describe it, and then the after. And I really didn't know how to reconcile the two. And I used to feel lots of anxiety about reconciling the two. Like, for example, I used to go to the VIP Style Awards, and then for years when I came home, I would look at the images online and think, oh my God, it's so anxiety inducing. Like I couldn't even imagine going to that. It was like these two separate me's. Whereas now it's funny, they've come back together, this psychotherapist in broadcasting. And I love it. I love it. And I feel so appreciative for it. And I can't believe I ever took broadcasting for granted. You know, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't conscious. I was very young and very overwhelmed, but there was definitely a disconnect, again, which is a theme for me, between what exactly I was doing and what I had achieved and how I felt about it. You know, whereas now I have a very aware, very conscious appreciation all the time for the journey, for the kind of really bizarre, unexpected full circle of it. But day to day, my life is way more relaxed. Like so boring.
Boring is lovely.
One promise I made myself at the end of that period. And maybe this is a reflection of just how adrenaline-filled breakfast radio is, but that I would never have my mornings like that again. That I would always have a slow and steady morning, that I would have space in the morning, to get up, to have a coffee outside, to play with my son, to take him to creche at a pace that isn't stressful. I don't want stressful mornings anymore. Yeah. And so I kind of set that as like my non-negotiable and built my days around that. So when I work, it's later in the day. So I'll generally start from around 11, sometimes 10 if I have to, but I'd rather it be 11. And I'll do my day's work from then. That's great. I'm much better at switching off now. Like when the work is done, it's done. Whereas I didn't used to have that boundary at all.
Yeah, that's lovely to have that as a boundary. Such a nice thing to have a morning. Yeah. I stressful mornings with kids are,
it's unsustainable. Really... I think I would be, knowing what I know now about myself, I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm making, even with the tools I have and the knowledge I have, where I'm making myself vulnerable to that kind of burnout again.
Yeah.
Like you have to be for real. You have to say, no, I got there before. Perhaps it could happen again. So I think it's good to have a few boundaries in place.
Yeah, boundaries. Oh my God. What would you say to someone? I'm struck with the image of Daniella sitting and not knowing who she is or where she is, that version of you. What would you say to someone who might feel like that now? Or what would you say to her now?
I'm just laughing because I was so confident. You would never have known. It was like an unflappable kind of self-assuredness and a real commitment to the denial. Again, not consciously, but it was just, I was running a very clear program underneath the surface. Yeah. And it worked and it worked and it worked until it didn't. So what I would say to her, I don't know, because I don't know.
She wouldn't listen anyway.
I think what happened to her is what was necessary. It was the only way. I think I was just that hard-headed that I had to see it and feel it myself. I don't think anyone could have said anything to me. Yeah. And if that's someone else's journey, I hope that the path I have followed since can be, perhaps a light in some way. I do often think if I was back there now and there was the rhetoric around mental health that there is now, would I have been a little bit more educated? Would I have been a little bit more self-aware? Would I have had a model, somebody who I could see that had done what I needed to do? Yeah. So I'm hopeful that this, to come from a place where you have generalized panic or agoraphobia or, perhaps I think I had episodic depression. I don't think I was ever clinically depressed, but I definitely think I had experiences of depression. To somebody who feels relieved of all of that, is something in and of itself. I don't know if you can even put words on that, like what that is, how you could extend that to somebody in a sentence,
It's far too neat a little package to be able to have.
Yeah, and it's so, the experience of it is so messy in reality,
Any final message before we wrap? I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but
my mind is going, say something profound, quick.
You do not have to say anything profound. You
Come
do not.
Up with the final line. That's
thanks
so
for listening. See you later.
I have absolutely nothing profound to say, but it was an absolute joy.
It was such a joy. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Image Wellness Project. If you enjoyed this chat, you might like to share it with a friend or rate, review, or even subscribe to our channel. You can also keep an eye on image.ie for lots more inspiration, insights, and expert advice. The Image Wellness Project is sponsored by Activia and Irish Life Health and recorded here in iconic offices. I will talk to you next week, but until then, remember to mind yourself.